If you're live.
Are we live? Ah, okay. Thank you, Steve.
Let me close the door.
Okay, so I think I'm live now. And yeah, thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. I'm just gonna send a quick little email to Rebecca to let her know I'm in case she hasn't already seen this. Had some access settings that weren't tweaked properly, I guess. I wasn't really sure about that. It's my first time going live, so good morning now, I guess. Okay, cool. I can see Rebecca's comments. Awesome. So I guess we are indeed live. So I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Alexander Rondeau, and I'm the program coordinator at the Near North Mobile Media Lab, where I oversee the Digital Creator North program. Oh, perfect. And everyone can hear me loud and clear. That's awesome. I guess I should introduce that this is the first chat of the Digital Creator North mini-series. So we're going to have 3 overall. We were initially supposed to have 4, though some of you may have heard about the partial roof collapse in the Lester B. Pearson Civic Center in Elliott Lake, which has affected our Digital Creator North space. So we're currently working on reopening it. That being said, I might also have to cut mine a little short in order to keep the momentum on that project. I guess also for questions, I'll try to keep an eye out on the comment section for questions. If I forget to look, maybe I'll just circle back towards the end of my chat to make sure that there aren't any unanswered questions. But I would love to hear questions. I would absolutely love that. I guess I can start by kind of introducing how I kind of got into the role and kind of how I work at this capacity. So I am an independent curator and an artist. I have a BFA in Image Arts and Photography Studies from Ryerson University. I've had exhibitions across Ontario, including a featured and sponsored exhibition during the 2017 Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival, so that was really amazing. Done several artist residencies, including an international artist residency with MAD, which was a group in Sigulda, Latvia. That was really incredible. And after which I relocated to the north. So I'm originally from New Liskeard, so the Timiskaming Shores area. I grew up on a farm in Kearns Township. One of those areas where there are more cows than people kind of thing. And so my both my artistic and curatorial practice look at sort of alternative site-specific strategies to display art works by marginalized, often as per my own penchant of queer artists. And that's kind of how I got into what the Near North Mobile Media Lab is doing, of having this sort of trans-northern lens to create access for media arts, digital arts, etc. across the north. So funny enough, I was in Chenois, which is like this lovely little cafe in New Liskeard when I stumbled upon a Digital Creator North poster. Walked across the library where the program was hosted and introduced myself to Steve Kaczynski, the program lead at the time, and volunteered to do a workshop with them. And now I've become the program coordinator for Digital Creator North. So that was like a funny little access point. I guess I should give kind of a bit more overview about Digital Creator North. So it's a series of 6 media arts and digital spaces for teens aged 14 to 19 across Northern Ontario. So our partner communities are Timiskaming Shores, where I'm from, Timmins, Sioux Lookout, Sault Ste. Marie, Elliott Lake, and Kenora. And our spaces are housed in various community partners. For the most part, they're libraries. So we have 2 exceptions being the Lester B. Pearson Civic Center in Elliott Lake, and Timmins is pretty cool because we have the Timmins Museum National Exhibition Center and the Timmins Public Library, which are actually side by side, so programming is split between those 2 spaces. Digital Creator North offers safe spaces for marginalized youth, or youth in general, within the 14 to 19 age range to come in and explore media arts, digital arts, and to just create works or even just hang out and have a space to hang out. There's a critical lack of teen spaces and youth spaces in the north. And so this was kind of like a way to address that problem while also creating a strategy to develop digital literacy. So helping youth and filling the gap where there are no access to like different programs, software, technology to learn about media and digital arts. So that's kind of where Digital Creator North came in. Specifically, Holly Cunningham, the executive director of the Near North Mobile Media Lab, did a survey with the lab back in 2013, just kind of looking at media arts and digital artists across Northern Ontario, and found that there was actually a critical lack. And so the Digital Creator North program came out to sort of address that and create learning opportunities to sort of foster the next generation of media and digital artists. So it's a program offered by the Near North Mobile Media Lab, which is a artist-run not-for-profit organization based in North Bay. So I'm working out of the Media Lab in North Bay. The Media Lab's mandate is to sort of foster and produce a network and a system of opportunities for media and digital artists from Northern Ontario to produce work, to present work, or to connect Northern audiences with like the best of the best in media and digital arts. So we're within the artist-run sort of model, we're more of a production facility than a presenting facility. So we don't have an exhibition space, but we do have a series, a screening series called North Bay Film, and we also have absorbed the North Bay Film Festival as part of our programming. So we do some presentation, but mostly we focus on the production aspect of digital and media arts discourses. So yeah, Digital Creator North felt like a very logical step for the Media Lab to take on in sort of facilitating the next generation and fostering the next generation of media and digital artists. Okay, I'm just gonna, cool, no comments so far. So Digital Creator North started officially in 2016 after receiving an Ontario Trillium Foundation grant. And so the grant was set for a 3-year funding cycle. So the first year was very administrative. It was kind of getting all the legwork done, getting the community partners lined up, getting the tech purchased, everything that would be necessary for the program to actually exist. Year 2 was hiring program leads in the spaces and actually opening the spaces and running the spaces. And so now we're actually approaching the end of year 3, which will be May 31st, 2019, marks the end of the Trillium funding. And so that being said, when we hire program leads in the spaces, they're full-time on-site mentors for youth to work in the spaces and to kind of be both role models, but also facilitators of like this sort of digital learning or media arts workshops. So for example, the Digital Creator North spaces offer both structured and unstructured programming. So for the most part, that looks like open studio nights during the weeknights so that youth can come in if they want, they can just hang out. If they want, they can play video games. If they want, they can start working on a film project. They can work on some photography projects. They can start building their website. They can do whatever they like. And then perhaps on the Saturday, we'll offer like a green screen workshop. We'll offer a coding workshop, graphic design workshops, whatever the specific community interests are. So it's a really responsive program. So we don't actually have like a rubric for programming. We don't have like a specific mandate beyond digital and media arts umbrellas. We kind of just respond to what the specific communities and the specific youth accessing the space are interested in. So for example, in Sioux Lookout, photography is really popular. And Timiskaming Shores, graphic drawing is really popular. So we just respond to whatever the youth are wanting to learn about and wanting to practice on, and what the overall community needs are. So across the board, the 6 digital creator spaces are actually quite different, and they've each kind of taken on their own identity. And that's really incredible to see this sort of authorship that has come across each of the spaces by giving teams autonomy over the space. Okay, so there's a question I'm gonna answer. How do you survey youth in each community to find what they're interested in? So that's actually pretty organic. We don't necessarily survey. We just kind of, the program leads will just respond to whatever the youth are asking for. So they'll just kind of observe which workshops are more popular, which gets more attendance, and usually it's something like photography or videography or cinematography. Or if like a team just specifically requests for a workshop, they'll go ahead and do like a green screen workshop. So it's a pretty organic, responsive process. We don't have, there's like no youth accountability to show up. There's no accountability to finish a project. It's mostly to explore and hang out and have fun and to have low barriers and to create the most accessible opportunities possible for them. And we kind of use this philosophy by teen learning researcher Mimi Ito, and she coined this little great acronym called HOMAGO, which stands for Hang Out, Mess Around, Geek Out. And it's kind of this idea of a participatory learning culture whereby if teens are coming into the space, they're just hanging out, they're more inclined to learn informally through each other by troubleshooting or workshopping or making a film together. They're going to learn more than an actual sort of like authoritative, like presentation-based learning strategy. So oftentimes that looks like youth coming in to play video games, seeing the program lead work on a film, be like, oh my God, what is that? Like, I want to learn how to do that. And they'll start to make their films together. And it becomes this really sort of organic and energetic and effervescent process, which I think is pretty cool and pretty special. And kind of circling back to what I was saying earlier about giving like autonomy to the teens over the space. So some of the spaces have really become responsive to different community needs. So for example, Temiskaming Shores, which is where I'm from, is largely accessed by queer and trans and two-spirit youth because there are no other safe spaces for them in the community. One of the teens, trans self-identified, walked into the space and they were really into graphic design. So they reached out to all their friends and their friends started to come when they realized it was like this like cool hangout safe space, and it just kind of had this like queer identity for a while. But teens are inherently very transient, so we know that perhaps right now is going to be a very queer space, but that might change in the future. And each of these spaces naturally will go through different changes as teen trends change, as new teens are within the age limit of coming in. So once they're at the 14-year-old age, they can come in and that'll be a whole new group, a whole new demographic coming in. As teens graduate, as they leave their communities, go to post-secondary, it also affects the program and what the identity of the program becomes and what their interests become, what programming starts to look like. And similarly, some of the spaces have like a teen council for their space where they kind of set their own like guidelines and their own kind of set their own accountability for like a behavioral code or code of conduct. And it's kind of just the idea that like teens are actually quite autonomous, and if you give them the power to write their own code of conduct, they'll kind of have like more of an accountability to themselves, to the space, and to each other. So it also usually ends up being the exact same code of conduct that like adults would draft anyways. So just kind of really focusing on like giving autonomy of the space to the teens. And similarly, we really encourage the program leads to come in and bring their own individual flair to the program and bring their own identity, their own practices into the spaces. And so specifically, we are more interested in hiring artists rather than educators for the space, because we do really want it to be a non-academic space. We want it to be decentralized from their school system. We want it to be a space for them that feels like it's by them. And by having like young emerging artists in the space, we're kind of putting more role models rather than authoritative figures in the space. It's really cool because the teens that access our spaces kind of see like, oh my God, like this is someone who's an artist who is working in New Liskard, who's working in Sioux Lookout, who's working in Elliott Lake as an artist. Like it's pretty incredible to see that there are like opportunities that come up like that. And by hiring like young emerging artists, like we're also kind of addressing like issues of youth out-migration and youth retention in the North by creating opportunities for emerging artists. Like for example, I'm like from New Liskard, but I came back from Toronto after my undergrad to work in the North for a not-for-profit artisan organization. Like that doesn't happen. People don't go from Toronto to the North for those jobs. So I think that's really incredible. And often we do see that the program leads in the different communities are actually relocating to their communities to have this employment opportunity. So most of them are not actually from their community. Some are, which is really cool. But for the most part, they've relocated. I'm just going to anything. Yeah, as a funny little side note, when I first started with this position, my first day was actually at the SPARC symposium in Temiskaming Shores. So that was kind of like just like a funny aside that I thought would be cool to mention. So yeah, I think I should kind of talk more about how the program was developed. So Digital Creator North is modeled after UMedia, which is a program based in inner city libraries in Chicago, which has like a very similar mandate of creating spaces for youth and giving them opportunities to develop and learn about digital media arts through access, through low barrier access, through free programming, through safe spaces, all these different factors that make the spaces more appealing to youth. And that program was replicated from UMedia, from the inner city library system to a sort of trans-northern lens, where we have these 6 communities across the north. But obviously there's a very big difference in downtown Chicago and northern Ontario. It's a bit more vast in this area, so there are different challenges that arise in having 6 spaces across the north. And for the most part, my meetings with the program leads look very similar to this. It's through Skype or through Google Hangouts or whatnot, and we sort of communicate through Basecamp, which is kind of like this online working platform. And so really using digital strategies to connect with the program across the spaces and to keep this sort of like team sense going and to keep everyone connected, which is really like, I don't know, sort of meta, and considering that they are themselves digital spaces, I think that's really kind of interesting as an alternative strategy to have like a larger scale program on a larger geographic sort of scale. What else? So the structured versus unstructured programming is very responsive, and oftentimes that will actually also take place through partnerships. So different organizations will often approach us, or sometimes we'll approach other organizations to do workshops in partnership with each other. So for example, Kirk, which is the Kuwaiti Education Resource Council, which they're based up in Sioux Lookout, partnered with the program lead in Sioux Lookout at the time to do several workshops for a couple days in remote flying First Nations communities, like Bearskin Lake, for example, whereby the program lead brought the gear from the space and did some workshops up in those communities, and Kirk arranged the travel. So we do often work with other organizations that have similar goals or overlapping areas within their mandate, and just prioritizing and centralizing youth and their access to digital and media arts. What else do I have on here? So kind of what we've seen so far with the program is an overwhelmingly successful response. The 3-year goal set with Trillium was to have 750 unique visitors within 3 years, and that was surpassed within the first year. We're now at 2,263 unique visitors, and the program isn't done yet. So the response has been incredible. These spaces are flourishing. Some, interestingly enough, the 2 busiest spaces are the smallest community in Sioux Lookout and the biggest community in Sault Ste. Marie, which I think does actually make a lot of sense. And different programs, like we've identified different success points for the programs, and having like an incredible on-the-ground champion to really promote the program and to be the face of Digital Creator North and to be an advocate for the space, either through the program lead or through the community partners. So for usually it's like the libraries or the museum or the civic center, for example, having those champions in the communities makes a huge difference. And naturally, proximity to high schools also identified success points. So naturally, if we're closer to some of the high schools, they're more easy to access. And so we noticed actually in Elliott Lake that was a bit of a challenge, because the only really sort of logistically feasible community partner at the time was the civic center, but it was so far from the high school. So we actually introduced this, we were looking at like different options like taxi tokens or whatever, but we ended up implementing, through the help of our community partner, an extra bus stop so teens can just take the bus to the digital creator space, which is amazing. I'm just noticing another question. Do you ever take part in partnerships that see other organizations or schools bringing groups into your spaces for free time or specific sessions? Yeah, so off the top of my head, in Sault Ste. Marie, there is a group, it's a homeschool group of teens that come in on every Thursday to work in the space. And I think they were recently working on like a yearbook project and cool stuff like that. So we're pretty open to partnerships with different organizations. And schools are a little bit trickier. Because of our funding, we're an out of school program. So partnering with schools is a little bit trickier, so we can't necessarily go into a school to provide a workshop, because that's something that the school should be funded to do, and we're funded to be a space outside of the schools. Though we will often, our program leads will go usually once a month to the school just to be on the lunch hour to just be hey, we're a space, we're for you guys, we're open, this is where we are, here's a little schedule of what we're up to. And those school visits are really great in promoting the program and advertising and marketing the program, no matter how much we advertise online or through our different community partners. Actually connecting face-to-face to teens is the best way to let them know that we actually exist. So I hope that answers that question. Another really amazing outcome we've seen from this program is teens actually getting hired to do work. So for example, there is a teen in Sioux Lookout. She's from Sandy Lake, which is one of the remote flying First Nations communities, and so she goes to the high school in Sioux Lookout throughout the school year, as most of the youth that access that particular space do. And she was contacted by Spliff Now, which is a health organization that's doing a project in partnership with Carleton University. And so she, through her skills that she's learned through the Digital Creator Program, was contacted to do this sort of, I guess, more so freelance contract position to do graphic design for their project. And so she's been, in addition to working as being a full-time high school student, she's getting some extra hours as a graphic designer, which is so incredible to see a teen in high school in Sioux Lookout working as a professional graphic designer. That's incredible. Other cool outcomes that we've noticed are teens participating in exhibitions. So they've been submitting to calls for submissions to other galleries, other artist film centers, juried art shows, etc. And that's been really incredible to see that there is indeed an increase in media arts and digital arts participation for these teens through the program that we've offered, and to see that they're actually applying their skills to the real world and being rewarded for it. They're winning prizes in art juried shows. They're getting jobs as graphic designers. This is pretty unusual and pretty incredible to see. Otherwise, we're also noticing sort of incidental benefits with specifically the program leads. They are growing tremendously as leaders, as facilitators, as artists, as administrators. And that was not something that was really taken into consideration in the development of the program, but it's a huge outcome that we've noticed, that through this role of facilitating media and digital arts with teens, that they've really started to flourish and they've gone on to do some amazing things. The nature of the program kind of sets the contract up with the program lead to be a year, because it alternates. So it's funded through the Trillium Foundation, and we also have partnerships or funding through NOHFC. So the contract position will alternate from one year to the other. So sometimes we've noticed that because a lot of these program leads are relocating to a new community, they find it maybe a little bit isolating sometimes. So that's been an identified challenge. And so sometimes they'll only stay for the 1-year contract. But they go on to do amazing things afterwards. They'll get hired as graphic designers, as videographers, and they've really, really flourished as in a professional capacity within the program. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much wrapping up all the key points I wanted to go over. So I'll just throw it out real quick. Is there any questions? Anything you want me to go over in more detail as I start to prepare to wrap up? The next chat is going to be by Katie Huxon, and so she's the program lead in Sault Ste. Marie, and she is going to give a tour of the space. She's going to show kind of what these philosophies and the program mandate actually looks like in motion in the space, what it looks like on the ground with the community partner, what the spaces look like, how they're being used, what their programming looks like, what their workshops look like, and what that actually becomes. And afterwards, we're going to have Steve Kaczynski and Dominic Lafontaine they're going to co-host a workshop or a webinar rather on like succession planning for the digital creator space. So Steve is the former program lead in Temiskaming Shores, and now he actually works as our tech coordinator at the Media Lab. And Dominic Lafontaine is his successor. And because we do encourage each of the program leads to bring their own flair, their own identity, their own practices to the space, we do notice that the space naturally kind of changes when there's a staffing changeover. So they're going to talk about that and identifying the success points in the sustainability of the actual space itself within staffing changeover. But yeah, if there's no more questions, I think I'm going to sign off. But thank you, SPARC. This was really lovely to take the time to just chat about what we're doing, because I'm pretty passionate about it and I think it's really incredible. And I personally wish, as someone who grew up queer in the rural countryside in New Liskeard, who went on to do digital and media arts, like I really, really wish something like this would have existed when I was a teen. I think that would have had really substantial impact on me, as I've seen it have a really substantial impact on the youth that access our space. So with that, I will sign off. And oh, quick question. Oh, thank you, SPARC and Rebecca. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye.